if you can repeat a skill, you're better than 95% of people, because 95% of people just don't show up. But when you remain calm, your mind slowly starts opening. And all of the knowledge, all of the videos, all of the mentors, all of the things that you've heard become accessible and available to you. And the reason we call it basics is because champions do the basics the best. If you're looking for passion, purpose, willpower, all of these words at the beginning of any journey, that's the wrong place to look at it. Intuition speaks to a still mind. Intuition doesn't speak to a busy mind. Because if you look at your surplus to determine your level of abundance, then you're living through a scarcity mindset. The more I try, the more I'm going to fail. The more I fail, the more I try. The more I try, the more successful I'll be. The more successful I'll be, the less I'll fail. You're not going to get that body by just sitting on the couch. You're not going to get that body by eating cake. It's a sign that you respect yourself enough. So I'll respect you.
Today's guest is a monk turned entrepreneur. Born in South Africa, he is a sportsman, a performance coach, a sports scientist, an ultra-marathoner, a monk, a psychologist, an author, and an entrepreneur. It is my absolute pleasure to feature Shamal Vallabhji on this podcast. He has coached several high-profile athletes, from Olympians, World Cup cricket teams, to tennis, track and field. He has worked with the Indian cricket team in 2003 World Cup. He was also the sports scientist to the South African cricket squad and the South African Davis Cup tennis team. He was also the coach to the Indian team in the Beijing Olympics 2008 and the London Olympics 2012. As if this was any less, he is also the advisor to Oprah Winfrey's Academy for Girls. And the list goes on. What makes him unique is his approach. He combines spirituality and science to coach super athletes. In conversation with Shamal Vallabhji. Enjoy yourselves. Hi Shamal, I'm so happy to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Bhakti. I'm excited to speak to you.
You know, when I read your profile, I was like, I have to share insights from this amazing person with the people I know. And here you are. Thank you so much for accepting my invite.
Thank you very much.
When I was drafting your introduction, I was overwhelmed. You have done so many things in such a short span of time, and your journey has been such a roller coaster. Totally amazing. So let's dive right in. Shamal, if you can tell us about your journey. How did a small boy from South Africa who aspired to be a cricketer turn into a monk, turn into an entrepreneur?
Yeah, Bhakti, thank you so much for inviting me. I think nothing happened by engineering. Everything just fell into place, and I had to just trust that journey as we went. As you rightfully said, I grew up in a small town called Tongaat in South Africa, and I wanted to be a professional cricketer. I trained. I was in the national setups. I was in the state setups for a long time. But I grew up in what was the apartheid, which was institutionalized segregation for people of color. So the first real jolt was when I realized, hey, you know what? You have to be the best person of color in the state or in the country to get a chance, because the quota system only allowed for one person to play. And I experienced that, when I went for national selections. I played a tournament. I was probably the best bowler in the tournament, but because the best batsman in the tournament was also a person of color, they selected him into the first team and they put me into the second team because he'd made that one quota. So it was very difficult. And then I decided to go and start studying, and I wasn't really ready to leave sport as such. So I studied sports science. And after studying sports science, I started coaching the national academies and the state teams. And what pushed me into the monastery to become a monk was when I went for an interview with the national job. And after interviewing me for about an hour and a half, they gave it to someone who was a friend of mine. They didn't hardly even interview him for 5 minutes. They just appointed him, And the reason they did that was because there was no quota system for support staff. And there was already a person of color in the team who was the physio at the time. So they didn't need to really hire anyone else. And, And it made me very disappointed, and I didn't know how to respond to that. So I started off by taking just one day and living in the temple. I grew up in a very spiritual family. One day became a week became a month, and before I knew it, I'd spent almost just under 4 years in there. But yet, it was a remarkable journey because it taught me, up until that moment in time, I really looked at performance from the lens of the body. And it was my journey in spirituality that taught me how to integrate the body and mind into performance. And I realized that really and truly, it's the mindset, your mind, that drives performance in some shape and form. And then when I left the temple in 2007, I got appointed with the Indian Olympic team. They were looking for someone, so I joined them. I worked with tennis players, with some swimmers, boxers. I went to 2 Olympic Games with them and then trained the entire team for Rio as well, which was the third Olympics. I traveled on the HP tour for almost 7 years. My athletes won more than a dozen Grand Slam titles during that time.
Wow.
Uh, I spent a few years on the PGA tour. I worked with the Kenyan marathon team. And then, whilst I was in India, I noticed that physical rehabilitation was not really very prevalent. And I noticed that, people were going for a lot of surgeries. The rate of surgeries was exceptionally high. And they were getting operated for very, very small, tiny procedures, which disappointed me because those things could have been treated conservatively. And I realized that, the physio ecosystem in India was very nascent. The therapists were not well trained. They were not given enough experience. Their fees were minuscule. They were getting paid 50 to 100 rupees a session, which is, today it's about $1, $1.20 per session at that stage, which was 10 years ago. And as a result of this, the orthopedic community were operating way more than they should. A lot of the surgeries were really unscrupulous. So I decided to step in and create a business that brought physiotherapy to the forefront as the first form of conservative rehab. And the idea of it was very simple. I'm not even a physio. The idea was to raise the price point of treatment so that this entire community could have a lot more disposable income, raise their standard of life so that they could educate themselves. And through this process here, we can create a greater awareness of how to heal and look after the body. So that's what drove me to become an entrepreneur. And I did that for a long time. I did that for almost 6 years. I ran that business. I exited it in 2017. And in between that, there have been a lot of other incidences that have happened in my journey with consultations, with teams, with traveling, things like that. But by and large, this is it.
That's such a journey filled with so many achievements, and so many things to learn. I can only imagine. And you mentioned the ashram and staying over there for close to 4 years. Just leaving everything back and staying in the ashram for that amount of time. That's a courageous decision in itself. After that, I'm just curious, how did you view money? Did you view it any differently?
I've always had, I wouldn't say a toxic, but I've always had a relationship with money that even I really never understood quite well. And the sense that was that I think a lot of people have this problem where they feel bad asking for it. They feel bad if it's coming. They feel bad charging for their services. We seem to have this perception that good people don't ask for money. There seems to be that stigma, and that stigma has been with me for a long time. In fact, as we speak, I'm still working on my relationship with money. But you know, when I was young and I moved into the temple, money was never really something I thought about. I was always looking at experience, looking at opportunity, looking to learn. I lived very sort of hand to mouth. Whatever I had, I spent. I used it, and I wouldn't say I spent it in the sense of spending and buying material stuff, but every cent I earned for the first 15 years of my life, I pumped back into doing a new course, new education, or traveling somewhere. Travel was a big part of my life. I've visited probably more than 130 countries in my life. And so I used a lot of my resources for that. Now my relationship with money is completely changing. I see it as I I welcome it. I see it as a tool. I set certain boundaries around how much I charge. I stick with that. I don't see it as a bad thing. In fact, I see it as a tool like anything else. Like a doctor would have a scalpel in his hand, money becomes one of those tools as well that can allow you to do good and bad. And it's the same with every single thing, a pen as well. Um, that's what it is. And I wouldn't say that the temple shifted my relationship to money. I don't think it made me think of money as a negative thing or as a bad thing or different. It never really came up too much. It was not something we thought about or something we focused on at all.
And what does spirituality mean to you?
Spirituality for me is really and truly the journey from head to heart. It's the journey of not wanting to cognitively rationalize everything, but feel my way through it. And through the process of feeling everything, spirituality is my link and my connection to the universe and to the energy. I was in the temple, so I call that energy Krishna, but that's what it is for me. Spirituality is that relationship, is that cord, and how everything feeds into that cord. And in the temple, when I grew up there, we come from the mode of service. you know we think that we're in service, and when you think you're in service, everybody's in service to someone. We feel that we're in service to Krishna, so we do everything in light of that. And so that's what spirituality is. It's a very, very simple, easy definition, but everything feeds into strengthening that relationship.
And back in the ashram days, so, and even now actually, I'm sure that meditation has played a key role in your life. And I was just curious, how do you meditate and how has meditation helped you in your personal and professional life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm very fortunate in that, because I went to the temple very early on when I was literally 22, 23. Meditation and chanting have been a core part of my life for almost 20 years right now. So, and I've played with different practices. Sometimes it's been chanting. When you're in the temple, to be a part of the order of ISKCON, you have to chant 16 full rounds of 108 Maha Mantras a day. So that has to go on. But over and above that, I do a lot of breath work. And then I do a lot of transcendental meditation every single morning, which is about 25 minutes of just stillness, just focusing on a vibration, just stilling the mind. That allows me to really be calm and be composed in any situation. That's the practice that really helps center me, irrespective of where I am. And I've been able to see phenomenal benefits on it over 20 years. As the practice evolved, uh, the depth of the practice has evolved, the insights have evolved, the awareness has evolved. It doesn't necessarily mean that the time has increased. So, it doesn't mean that what started off as 15, 20 minutes 20 years ago is now 2 hours a day. No,
Mhm.
sometimes it's still 20 minutes, sometimes it's still 30 minutes, you know. But I have learned to recognize it as a core part of my entire functioning. Bhakti, when I ask people, and this is very interesting. You ask someone, think of the worst day in your life. You may have lost someone, you may have got fired, something terrible may have happened to you. Right? Reflect on that. And then on that day I ask them, hey, did you brush your teeth? And most people don't even have to think twice. They can't remember doing it, but they said yes, they did. I said, did you have a shower? They can't remember doing it, but they have a strong sense that they did. So I said, okay, now you have so much conviction that you did it, right? Even though you can't remember. So I asked them, how do you have so much conviction? They said, because we do it every day. So I said, why do you do it every day? It's not essential for life. You don't brush your teeth, you're not going to die. You don't have a shower, you're not going to die. So why do you do it every day? And they say they do it every day. And when you keep peeling away the layers, you find out they do it because these two practices are linked to good hygiene. And good hygiene is something that they want to practice. So if you want to practice good hygiene, you'll do this every single day. Now, meditation, most people struggle with the habit because they don't look at a habit as an essential part of their life. And if you don't consider it essential, you'll forget about it on certain days. So for me, meditation is as important as brushing my teeth. And it's the exact same thing with anything. Any practice, if you consider that essential, you will do it every single day. And I tell people, even in relationships, you know, you have to set what is essential. Like with my partner, for example, it's essential for us to have two 15-minute conversations a day, morning, evening, no matter. I travel, I'm on a plane every single week. She's exceptionally busy as well, right? But I said, if you don't meet these essential requirements, you can't expect the relationship to survive. You don't meet the essential requirements of brushing your teeth, you can't accept to have good hygiene, isn't it? If you don't have the essential requirements of things that stabilize the mind and cleanse the mind, then you can't expect to be in a good mental space.
No, definitely. And, it's very interesting you said that, because nobody teaches us how to think, or that meditation is as important as brushing your teeth. It's just something that, gets into our daily habits. But meditation, as you said, is so necessary to just remain calm, in times of stress, especially when there are so many uncertain situations that kind of come your way.
Yeah, it's fundamentally important, because if you want to be successful in life, um, see, anyone can be successful at the ground level.
Mm.
Anyone. The success that catches people's eye is success that is achieved at the height, at the pinnacle of pressure. So if it's an athlete, it's at the Olympic Games or the World Cup, as we're seeing right now. I mean, look, everyone's going to be looking at Messi on Sunday, and they're going to be looking at maybe Mbappe for France, right? And that goal that they may score on Sunday will be more important than any of the other goals. Now, they've scored thousands of goals. What is it that makes that one more important? It's that it's done at the height of pressure, isn't it? So, to be able to be successful at the height of pressure, you need three things. You need competence, is the first one. Competence comes from your knowledge, the practicing of a skill, all of that. Your ability to execute a skill. The second thing you need is confidence. Confidence comes from hard work. Okay. Now, hard work comes from repeating a skill over and over and over again every single day. If you can repeat a skill, you're better than 95% of people, because 95% of people just don't show up. Okay. But the defining thing is composure. Composure is the ability to remain still at the height of pressure, to block out all external variables. Composure comes only from practices that still the mind. So, spending time in nature, trusting the space, not doing too much, meditating every day, doing some breath work, whatever it is that stills your mind, doing that repetitively every single day is what will allow you to be calm at the height of pressure. And the reason why you want to be calm at the height of pressure is because when you're stressed, your brain shuts down, it closes, and you don't have all the options or all the logical options available to you. But when you remain calm, your mind slowly starts opening. And all of the knowledge, all of the videos, all of the mentors, all of the things that you've heard over the course of your life that pertain to that situation become accessible and available to you. So at the height of pressure, the calmer you are, the more options you have available to navigate external variables. We call it a state of flow. A flow state is what we refer to it. And it's fundamentally important, if you want to be successful, to have these three C's.
Can the state of flow be achieved by everyone?
Yes, it can be achieved by anyone and everyone who's willing to do the work.
Mm.
You have to be willing to do the work every single day.
It's easy to be calm when you're not under pressure, but maintaining the same calmness under pressure is a skill, as you just mentioned. So, let's say a batsman is facing an Anil Kumble's fast paced bowling. How do you train them to be calm in a high pressure situation?
Well, I train them. There's a few things that I'm doing as a performance coach with them. One is I'm teaching them a skill that helps them calm their body and mind down. So very often it's breath work. I teach them a breathing cycle. Then the second is I teach them to integrate that breathing cycle into a routine that they do every single point, at every point. So if it's a batsman, when he stands to receive the ball, what's his routine like? I integrate that breathwork cycle or that stillness practice into that routine so that their brain recognizes and can reset everything. The third thing that I do is I teach them to identify the obstacles. Obstacles is a fundamentally important part to cognitive performance. Now, what happens is when you don't identify the obstacles, your body and brains, when that obstacle faces you, they don't see it as an obstacle. So it becomes a roadblock and you're just stuck, But when your brain identifies, okay, let's assume I want to get, uh, uh, let's take football, for example. And you say, hey, the guy said, I'm going to get a free kick. Yeah. Okay. And the free kick's going to be, 10 meters outside the box. Okay. And we're going to have 15 minutes to go. And the score's going to be 0-1 and we down. And I need this to equalize. Right. Now, that's the situation. Now, everyone will tell you visualize it going into the top corner, this, that. Right? And you can do that. The problem is that when you get to that situation in reality, there are numerous obstacles. The wall could be here, there could be lots of things. You could have got knocked on your knee and your knee's paining, so you're not. The crowd could be chanting someone else's name. Any one of these obstacles could completely derail you. Now, when you list your obstacles down, in that moment, everything that's happening that you've listed down, your brain recognizes as an obstacle. And when it recognizes it, it'll find a way around it, over it, or through it. So the second thing that I'm doing with performance is I'm teaching people how to identify obstacles and keep them salient in their mind, because the solution will always manifest itself, right? And it'll always find a way around the obstacle. Right? But the point is that it's not that the solution is not present, it's that we have an inability to see the obstacle. That's the problem.
And for the non-athletes, so if they have to remain calm in a high pressure situation, the normal people, a 9 to 5 job, outside of chanting, meditation, breath work, how do you get them to see the obstacles that you just mentioned?
Seeing the obstacles is very easy. You just have to sit down and write it. Like whatever you want to achieve in the day, write down we call it a vision document. So where do you see yourself in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Write your life. I know I visualize myself in this position. I'm living in this place here. Use your 5 senses. This is the sort of family life I have. This is the amount of time I'm doing here. This is the position I see myself getting into. And then you write your obstacles as, okay, what could be the stumbling blocks? For me to do this, I need this education and I don't have it. I need this experience and I don't have it. I need this amount of money, I don't have it. Now, when you write down these obstacles, your brain automatically switches into ways to get that, to get around that. You say, okay, listen, the last 5 CEOs had MBAs from Harvard. I can't get an MBA from Harvard. But your brain will automatically find a solution. Okay, maybe I can look at this university. Maybe I can look at this. Maybe I don't need that. Maybe I've got something else. Your brain's re-engineering all the time. So listing down obstacles is a very simple thing. It just requires space and time for you to just be still and just take a pen and paper and just keep jotting it. And it's work in progress.
Yeah.
Every time you write it, you just got to keep visiting this document every 6 months. Look at it, and you'll notice that whatever you write down there, there's a very good chance your body and brain has found a way to work past it.
That's a fantastic advice. It's almost like a manifestation journal, right? Where you feel the reality of the future and take the steps to meet it.
Yeah, the problem with manifestation, it is an addition to manifestation. In fact, this was a part of a research study. It may have been done by a Harvard professor. I think his name was Daniel Ottinger, if I'm correct. He did exactly the same thing, where he got them to do an envisioning, which is manifestation, and he took another group and said, write down the obstacles. And between the two groups, the group that listed down the obstacles were closer. In fact, most of them achieved that goal that they wanted to. And it wasn't that they did anything different. It was just that their body recognized the obstacle on the path to getting there, whereas everyone else, they didn't recognize it. So yes, it is a manifestation exercise. But when you talk of manifestation and you talk of envisioning, but you envision without an obstacle, then what happens is, as soon as the obstacle comes in the mind, the brain doesn't recognize it, and it drops you, it holds you back. There's a beautiful study done where they looked at two people who did the same envisioning exercise of losing 10 kgs, and they got some people to recognize the obstacles. So some people said, hey, I don't exercise. And one says, I love sugar, or I love cake. Okay, they said, okay, you got 60 days to lose it, right? And the cohort that listed obstacles all achieved their goal. Because why? Instantaneously, as soon as the sugar or dessert was put in front of them, they uh, were able to say no to it. Soon as they got a time when they found, hey, I'm tired and I don't feel like exercising, they went out and walked for 5 minutes. Why? Because soon as they said, I didn't want to do it, the brain recognized it as an obstacle. And when it recognized the obstacle, it tried to create a little bit of momentum to move past it. Whereas the people who didn't, I did feel like working today, okay, pass it on. Okay, they gave something, their choices around the type of food they made, they always went for what was driven through emotion as opposed to what was driven through the rational mind.
And even when it comes to spirituality and high performance, how does spirituality help in achieving high performance? So, since you've been a monk and a high performance sports coach, have you found a direct correlation between the two?
There's a direct correlation between spirituality and everything. Spirituality is the science of the self. It's teaching you how to understand yourself. And understanding yourself is the secret to high performance. To understand how your mind operates, to understand how your body operates, to understand how you respond to external environments and external threats. All of this is the science of the self. And that's what spirituality is. Spirituality is also the ability to cultivate humility. Spiritual person cultivates humility. Humility is the foundation of learning, and the foundation of learning is needed in high performance, especially in the world we are right now, where things are evolving so rapidly. You need to be able to be adaptable and agile, and the only way you can be agile and adaptable is if you are open to receiving information from different sources. Being a student, that's the foundation of learning. So uh, spirituality and high performance go hand in glove. You'll find very, very often, you'll find the people who are most successful are the people who, in some shape and form, are surrounded by a good association of people. They're in the right ecosystem. Okay, you'll find that they also respect their own self time. They respect their me time. They're able to carve it out. They're able to clear the calendar and carve out time. They're very, very humble. They're able to recognize the silver lining in any situation, the positivity in any situation. That's also very, very spiritual lens. So these are the common traits at a very general 30,000 feet that you'll see common between a person. And I'm trying to answer it being very, very, keeping any religious context out of it, just being very, very
Sure.
general. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that because it is said, right, that you're an average of five people who you spend most time with.
Yeah, correct. You are definitely an average of the five people you spend the time with. And in fact, when I coach people, I tell them if you can list down one of the qualities that you want to imbibe in yourself or
Mhm.
one of the habits that you want to create, if one of the five people you spend your time with doesn't have that habit, you've got zero chance of inculcating it in your life. Zero chance. Because the brain has a conscious and an unconscious part. Okay. And the unconscious part is 95%. The conscious part is literally about 5% or even less. And the only thing you can change is what is in the conscious part. Okay. Now, if the subconscious or unconscious is 95%, right? And let's assume you want to bring kindness in as a practice. Okay. For you to consciously remember kindness as a skill in that 5% is exceptionally difficult because you've got so many other things doing. But if you are surrounded by people who practice kindness in different forms every day, then you are getting unconscious and subconscious conditioning around a habit you want to cultivate. And you're more likely to bring that into your conscious mind.
Yeah, it's very important to be selective with the kind of people who you hang out with.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Great. And as a coach, Shamal, do you focus on strengths or weaknesses of an athlete?
It completely depends. It depends on how important is that weakness to the success of what they're doing.
Mhm.
For example, like right now, like if I get an athlete who's highly skillful at hitting or kicking a ball, and he tells me, listen, technology is my weakness. I don't use it. I don't understand it. I don't want to even touch it. You know, I don't allow that to happen. Why? Because it's not that I should be focusing only on his skill development. It's because the weakness that he doesn't want to touch is so vitally important to staying agile in this world. You understand?
Right.
But the same athlete who says, hey, listen, I practice, I use technology, but I only use technology to improve my performance, but I'm not interested in any social media. I don't want to have a public profile. I'm not doing that. Then I say, okay, fine, fine. But I don't need that. Why? Because it's not integral. So analyzing of strengths and weaknesses cannot be done independently of the situation you're trying to grow the person in. You know, it's not as simple as I focus only on strengths, or I focus only on weaknesses. It's the goal is to make the person you're coaching a better individual, a better human being. But you got to make him a better human being, relational to how he works, the ecosystem, the field, and who he is as a person.
Right. So you focus on the weaknesses if it is a key component to success.
Yes, if it's a key component to his success in the way we can move him forward, yes, then I wouldn't say I focus on it, but I don't allow it to fall off the table. We're always bringing it, and we're nudging ways in which, I'll bring somebody into the ecosystem that can just slowly help him learn that. And obviously focusing on strengths and mastering strengths is a very, very important part of mastery. In fact, we don't call it strengths, we call it basics. So what we do is we say, hey, what are the non-negotiable basics that you need to do every day? So for example, if I'm working with a golfer, he needs to hit 100 balls with just his wedges, because why? 60% of the game is played under 40 meters, right? So he needs to be able to master that. So the mastering his short game is critical to performance. If I'm working with a writer, the basics are, how well does he write 1,000 words a day? How well does he articulate? How well does he scratch for new ideas? Things like that. These are basics. Like, for example, the basics for a tennis player is putting the ball over the net. So how can he put the ball over the net 100 times in a row? you
I
know
love that you call the strengths as basics. I'm definitely
basics.
going to be using that for myself.
And and the reason we call it basics is because champions do the basics the best.
Mm. So, you coach super athletes who are all very successful and famous. But now, with success comes the risk of being arrogant. This applies in any field, even in the 9 to 5 world. How should one remain grounded and humble in the face of success?
The only thing that's going to keep you humble is the people you're surrounded with. If you're surrounded with people who are constantly going to feed that ego, elevate that ego, allow you to behave in any sort of manner that you want to, not make you reflect on certain behaviors and certain choices you're making, then you've got no choice. Humility is is a direct byproduct of the people you surrounded yourself with. But when I coach someone, the first question I ask them is, I said, hey, I'm not interested in your goal. What you want to achieve in life is not as important to me as how you would like to be remembered. So the first question I ask someone is, how would you like to be remembered? Okay. And that becomes my true north in everything you do. Every single thing you do after that, I make sure that when you leave a room, people will speak of you in the manner that you would like to be remembered. Because success is a variable thing. 10 years ago, if you were a unicorn that was valued at $1 billion, it was a massive thing, very, very big. Today, a company could go to I mean, there's something recently on the 30th of November, which is what, 2 weeks ago, there was a company that was launched called Chat GPT, which was an AI chatbot, right? That uses AI to create conversations. So you could type anything in it, and it will write an essay just using AI. And in the first 3 days of use, it had a 1 million downloads. Okay, Sam Altman is the founder of it, and Elon Musk funded it. Okay, within the first 2 weeks, it's already valued at 1.5 billion US dollars. Within 2 weeks of its launch, that's its value. So, what I'm saying is that what was a massive goal 10 years ago is no more massive goal right now. And in the next 10 years, companies that are just a month old will start with that valuation, because these are variable successes, you know. But when you talk of how you'd like to be remembered, it's hard work. You have to work towards it, you know. So, like people always tell me, I said, hey, I work with the mind, but I respect the body a lot. So I respect the body, which means I respect a person whose body looks good. Why? Because it's a sign of hard work. You know, if you got a six pack, if you've got well defined, it means you show up every day for yourself. You do the hard work. You know, you're not going to get that body by just sitting on the couch. You're not going to get that body by eating cake and doing whatever you want to. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign that you respect yourself enough. So I'll respect you as well. You know, so that's the thing. So just like how the body is a sign of how you respect your thing, your how you want to be remembered is also a byproduct of hard work, and you need to cultivate that skill in every single conversation you do.
Yeah, I love that. How you want to be remembered. If you come back to it, it'll always make you grounded.
For sure, totally, totally.
And you mentioned about respecting someone who puts in the hard work in their body. So just relating to that, I know many people who want to be fit and healthy but lack the motivation to work out. Some can resist sugar only until they see a chocolate somewhere. So these people have all the good intentions in the world to lead a healthy lifestyle, but they simply lack willpower. So what's your advice to them?
You know, willpower is a very, very interesting thing. You know, there's a neuroscience component to it, there's a psychological component to it, there's a drive component to it, and fundamentally, it's going to always come down to um, it comes down to how badly you want it. You know, and I think Bhakti is very important for people to understand, and I think with the willpower, there's another conversation that always comes in, which is passion. They talk about, hey, I'm not finding passion. I can't find anything I'm passionate about. I can't find anything I like. I can't do all of this. You know, people who are searching for motivation, and people are searching for willpower, and people are searching for passion. I tell them that you're looking for it in the wrong place. Okay. What do I mean by this? If you're looking for passion, purpose, willpower, all of these words at the beginning of any journey, that's the wrong place to look at it. You'll only find these things at the end of this journey. You know, the problem is in the beginning, it's hard.
Yeah.
In the beginning, no one who starts a journey, no musician who doesn't know how to play three chords, or guitarist whose fingers are bleeding because he's passionate about it. No, he gets passionate about it after 10 years of going through all of these ups and downs. It becomes a part and parcel of who he is. Willpower gets cultivated as you spend more time doing it. There's no easy way around hard work.
And I think all of us should also have coaches, mentors for our personal, professional lives who we can confide in. They're like the Northern Stars who can guide us, pull us out, course correct us.
Absolutely. Everyone needs a coach, and find coaches in different elements of life. You know, the one coach cannot guide you financially, emotionally, spiritually, in your relationships. Identify the area you're looking for growth in and find a coach in that area. And then don't be afraid to take a step back from that relationship if you need to grow in another area.
Right.
You know, do that. Yeah. Like I live in the temple, like my friends that mentor me spiritually, I'm not going to go to them for stock market advice. You know, I'm not going to go to them for how to get a six pack. That's not the area of expertise. I'm setting myself up for failure if I'm expecting that. You know, so be very clear about what you want and be very clear who you're asking.
For sure. And coming to intuition, Shamal, so when athletes go on field, let's say a cricketer, for instance, Dhoni has to decide who bowls or bats next. Sometimes he may change the order that has been pre-decided, and he makes those decisions on the spot. So on the field using his intuition. Many high performing athletes swear by their intuitive sense as it allows them to make the right decisions on the field. So, as a coach, how do you train them on increasing their intuitive power?
Well, the way we train people to increase the intuition is that we give them the courage to listen to their decision each time, and we start tracking it. I personally track it. So whenever my athletes have that feeling, oh yeah, I should serve this serve, or I should hit the ball here, or I should bowl this person. You know, I have to encourage them to go with that first choice, that gut feeling a few times. Because if you never go with it at all, then we never know if it's going to work. And only when we go with it for a certain amount of time are we able to then get a statistic around how strong that intuition is. Now, once you have a data point, we can make that data point stronger. We can bring in other tools and interventions to improve it. But, you know, in the world of high performance, Bhakti, there's really no room for self doubt. There's no room. You can doubt yourself before the game starts. But when the game starts, there's absolutely zero room for self doubt. And that's what we're trying to cultivate with them. We're trying to have absolute conviction, and no decision's the wrong decision. Even if he said, hey, I have a feeling I should bowl this person, and I bowled it, and the person got hit for 6 sixes and you lost the game, that wasn't the wrong decision. You backed your gut. It didn't work out this time, right? There's a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lesson to be learned for everybody, the batsman, the bowler, the coach, the captain, for everybody. And there's a subtle difference between, hey, is it really my intuition, or is it memory? Is it past experience that's whispering in me? Now, if you want to back your intuition, then you need to be cultivating a practice that stills the mind. You need to be able to be comfortable in stillness, because intuition speaks to a still mind. Intuition doesn't speak to a busy mind, So it's criticism, it's the imposter, it's past experience, it's so many other things that speak to a busy mind. And intuition speaks to a still mind. Now, if you're telling me, hey, I want to back my gut, then I'll always say, yes, go ahead. But for you to differentiate between whether it's your gut and whether it's a piece of knowledge or a piece of experience that you're actually recalling, you have to understand how well do you know yourself and how much time do you spend by yourself being still to allow that voice to come out.
And that's actually very interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you that how do you differentiate between that inner voice and intuition? How do you actually know it's intuition at that point in time, or is it just the inner chatter that's going on from past
Yeah,
memory?
intuition will only talk to a still mind.
Mm.
A busy mind won't hear intuition. He'll hear every other voice except it. And the thing is that intuition gets stronger with time, whereas the imposter voice will keep changing its mind.
And tracking it, as you said, helps.
Yeah, tracking it is very, very important. I track everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And for our viewers out there, what advice would you like to give someone who really wants to strengthen their intuition?
The first piece of advice is to start finding a practice that stills you and calms you down, and do that every single day. The more still the mind is, the more you learn to trust the space that you create, uh, the better your chance of listening to your intuition is. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is, get rid of, become more minimalistic, declutter, carve away, just get rid of stuff you don't need to work with. Don't fill your day unnecessarily. If you want to listen to that voice inside you, you have to be comfortable just sitting on the couch, just doing nothing, because that's when it will speak. It's not going to speak to you when you're jumping in an Uber between two meetings. That's not your intuition. So you really need to be calm. The third thing is, spend a lot of time in nature. When you spend time in nature, the body really calms down, the cortisol levels drop, you get completely de-stressed, and you're in a high resonance environment, and that's the environment where you're more likely to sort of tap into what you feel. And the last thing is, the only way to really know whether it's intuition or not is, A, journal it down, but second, act on it. If you don't learn to act on it, then we'll never know what it was.
So, Shaman, moving on to detachment, Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to be detached from our goals. So, let's say I worked really hard, practiced day and night. I put in my all, but I got out on the first ball, or I failed to achieve my goal. How do I be detached from my goal in this case?
We should always practice being detached from the goal, but attached to the process. So, you got to be attached to the process of mastery, which means if you are detached from the hard work, the goal will never manifest itself. If you are attached to the hard work and the process of doing repetitively that skill, then that's mastery. And in some shape and form, it's also kindness. It's self-kindness in some shape and form, because what's happening is you're attached to the process, you're working hard every single day, but you're not judging yourself on the basis of an outcome where there could be multiple variables that are beyond your control. The first thing I would ask them to do, Bhakti, is try to draw your awareness to what it is you're most attached and most detached from, because that is a window into your subconscious. It's a window into your past, your background, maybe even your traumas that are allowing you. Now, each one of those levels will open a window into so much more. Ask yourself, hey, why is it that I'm completely detached from this thing? So, for example, someone is like, hey, I don't get attached to people. Okay, yes, I respect that. But you are not getting attached to people, not because you're a monk who's practiced meditation and stillness, and in that heightened state, you're detaching from everything. You are detaching on the basis of trauma, which is not good.
Right.
So how do you get to a state of detachment is also important as the detachment itself. There's a healthy way and there's an unhealthy way for everything. So the first point I would ask people to do is list down a few areas in your life and ask yourself, hey, am I attached to my possessions? Am I attached to my car? Am I attached to my children? Am I attached to my partner? Am I attached to my money? What am I attached to? How do I feel about this? And how did this come into play? Before you even ask about how it comes into play, look at the disparity between these two and ask, where did that come from?
Like getting to the root cause of being detached to certain things or people naturally.
Correct.
Right. And do you also think that the abundance versus scarcity mindset also helps?
I have this abundance conversation with my partner every single day. She wants to cultivate an abundance mindset. And I keep saying, hey, what does the abundance mindset mean for you? Like, I believe I have an abundance mindset, but do I have copious amounts of wealth? And do I have, no, I don't. But everything I ask is there. Everything I want is there. So I live abundantly because everything that I'm asking is there. I don't have surplus to give me confidence, but I trust that when I want it, it's there. So, how do you frame this word abundance? What does abundance look like for you? Is very important. Most people's interpretation of that word is very skewed. They think abundance means I need to have $50 million in my bank account, or I need to be driving fancy cars, or I need to be having all of this. Then I'm abundant. So they look at the surplus that they're not using to determine their abundance. But yet when you go into the temple and you ask one of my monk friends, do you have an abundant life? And he says yes. And he says, why? He says, because whatever I want, I want. If I feel like eating this food, it's there. If I feel like going to this place, I can go. If I feel like meeting this person, I can do that. So I said, it's a it's a higher way of processing it. But it's a very, very important thing to do, because if you look at your surplus to determine your level of abundance, then you're living through a scarcity mindset. And a scarcity mindset is a fear-driven mindset, whereas an abundant mindset is an opportunity-driven mindset.
And coming to dealing with failure. So, what about the fear of failure? Athletes are highly competitive individuals, and when they fail, it can get pretty tough. How do you, as a coach, manage this fear of failure in them?
Athletes fail so much. Athletes fail more times in one day than most people fail in years or in a lifetime. Literally, we are failing every single day. You have a look at the best athletes in the world, they succeed less than 30% of the time. We're just dealing with failure. But we have a nice rule. We fail fast, we experiment, but we move on quickly. So we say, the more I try, the more I'm going to fail. The more I fail, the more I try. The more I try, the more successful I'll be. The more successful I'll be, the less I'll fail. And we'd never end a day on a failure. So what we do is, if the guy's failing in practice, we go out, even if the team's lost a game, sometimes we will, if it's late at night, we'll have a practice session the next morning. We just get it out the system quickly. So that's what we try to do, is we don't let a failure sit in the body for too long. We reflect on it, we analyze it. We don't talk about it for more than 48 hours. We process it and we put it, pack it, and move forward. We're always trying to move beyond it very, very quickly. That's what athletes are doing all the time. And we have the luxury of doing it because we're practicing the same skill over and over again. So, and our ecosystem environment's very, very set so we can go in it.
Right. And basically gush it out of your system as soon as possible and get to the next thing.
Totally, totally, totally.
And, moving on to emotional baggage. So let's say an athlete has had a bad day off field. Things aren't going well in their personal life. Now it's game day today, and they need to switch their mental frequency to another dimension, zone in, tap into their intuition, power through the game, and give it their best. So, as a coach, what do you tell them so that they leave their emotional baggage off the field?
So very few athletes bring emotional baggage onto the field because you're operating at such a high level of intensity that it's very hard for you to be thinking about something else at that time. You're likely to die. Like, you're watching the World Cup football right now. Let me break it down for you. The game is played over 90 minutes. An average footballer will turn 500 times in 90 minutes, and each turn will be about 100th of a second. He'll touch the ball about on average between 120 to 140 times in 90 minutes. And each touch is on average between 2 to 400ths of a second. Okay, so over 90 minutes, his impact time on the game is 90 seconds. Okay, so things are operating far too fast and far too much of an intensity for him to be thinking about the fight he had with his girlfriend. It can't. And as a coach, if we see even like an iota of sharpness not being there, we pull them off. We not in, like, you got to understand it. See, it's my job is to make the athlete bet this thing. But if I'm in a team game, for example, my main priority is the team winning. And in those 90 minutes of competition, or 1 hour or 5 hours of competition, the sole goal is the result of that. My sole goal is not to get his emotional state to a great place. That's the last thing I'm interested right now. If he hasn't become sharp at that moment and he hasn't been able to package it aside, he's out. We find someone else and we'll deal with it later. There's times and places for everything.
And what does this translate to, the non-athletes in the corporate world? How should they deal with their emotional baggage?
The first thing they need is they need me time. Everyone needs, everyone has family time and everyone has work time. Okay. And very few people carve out the space for them to be alone by themselves. It's called me time. Right. Now, there's pressure in both the environments. Family pressure is there and work pressure is there. And if there's no me time, they're going to flow over into each other. Right. Now, most often, it's going to flow over into your family. Why? Because people are aware that certain errors and certain mistakes in the work environment could be highly costly to your reputation, if not financially. So they're a little more cautious on that side. But they're not as cautious with their family. So they speak anyhow and this thing. So without me time, this pressure is going to bubble over into other areas for sure.
Got it. And, talking about negative self-talk. So let's say when a Virat Kohli gets run out, he may think to himself that I should not have taken that run, or that was a bad move. And that negative self-talk, it kind of goes on. So that inner critic is such a prevalent part of all our mental lives and can often lead to shame spirals of anxiety, depression, and self-doubt. So how do you deal with your inner critic?
I think it's very important for everyone listening to understand that yes, athletes reflect on their decisions. We understand whether we should have done this, we shouldn't have done this, and then it's done. We talk about it, we reflect on other options, what we could have done, where we could have hit the ball, how we could have bowled, what were the choices. It's packaged, then it's gone. The media and the commentators talk a lot more about a mistake than and it ever plays in an athlete's mind. That's the problem. The problem is that you are listening to a person who gets paid to speak, right? And he doesn't know what to talk about. So he amplifies the sporadic errors that happen in an entire timeline, right? That's what he's doing. So You must understand this is very, very important that when you're listening to someone speaking about an error and dissecting it in 100 different ways and stuff like that, he's getting paid to dissect that, right? We are not thinking about it in the same way he is. We analyze it in 5 minutes, it's done and gone. I keep telling, I work with a lot of actors, and I said, never take the advice of a critic seriously. Why? Because a critic is job is to criticize. That's why he's called a critic.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So if the person's job is to analyze something negatively, why on earth would you listen to it? We have a tight circle of people that they would listen to, and that's it. They circle of five.
Right.
Outside that circle, they don't give a damn about what anyone says. It's completely locked into this.
Like being very selective about the information that you're actually taking in. So
Yeah, and you got the best coach standing next to you. Why would you bother about the opinion of a journalist
right.
or the opinion of a person on social media? The best is standing right next to you. 24, he's working with you. Why would you worry about anyone else?
Great. So moving on to the slow fire round, Shamal. One lesson from the Bhagavad Gita that you follow closely.
For me, it's humility. Humility is the most important lesson. Yeah.
Beautiful. One positive and one negative common trait in high performing athletes and CEOs of the organizations you work with.
The positive trait is that they very decisive in their decision making. The best leaders, they make tough decisions very, very quickly. The negative trait is there's nothing really negative, and I don't see one common thing that's clear amongst all of them. But the one thing I want to say is that every single trait has two sides of it. It could be negative and positive. For example, the decisiveness that's positive can also be the decisiveness that's negative, in the sense that maybe they've not held enough time, or they've not thought about it quickly enough, or being overly empathetic can be a positive and be a negative. So any single trait, like any tool that we spoke about, can become negative or positive depending on how you use it. So it's all very contextual, and I think to anyone listening, apply the tool to the context at all times.
One lesson you learned as a monk that helped you be a successful entrepreneur.
I think it was patience. I'm an extremely patient sort of communicator, very tolerant, good listener. So yeah,
And what does success mean to you?
the confidence to listen to my heart, the courage to act on those decisions, and the strength to accept the outcome.
One difference between a champion and an underdog.
Um, a champion's always in the mind of the students. He's always looking and willing to learn from anyone and everyone.
A tool for people who are trying to rewire their brain to cultivate a new habit.
Meditate. Start the day with meditation.
Love that. A tool for students going to school or university to help them increase their performance.
Start your day with meditation.
A self-care habit to follow for a healthy mind.
Journal.
What's the best advice that you've received?
The best advice I've received is subtract before you can add. Before you think of doing anything else more, remove stuff that's on your plate already. It creates mental space, mind space.
Nice. So, Shamal, are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
Okay, one word for time.
Time, slow.
Intuition.
Heart.
Logic.
Saying dangerous.
Success.
Success is stillness.
Beautiful. Failure.
Failure is a learning.
Shamal Vallabhji.
Still.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, why do you think logic is dangerous?
I'm saying because if you go into the process of trying to rationalize everything, you get stuck in a very dangerous loop, because there's narratives to rationalize anything and everything, and success will come from how you feel, not how you think.
Great. Wonderful. With that, it's a wrap, Shamal. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing your wisdom. I have to tell you that your positive energy is definitely contagious.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. And to everyone listening, I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you.
I hope this Power Pack podcast has given you lots to take back. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for many such interesting conversations coming your way.